To say carbon emissions is a big problem is an understatement. It is one of, if not the biggest problems humans are facing. That is why it is very important to understand it. What causes carbon emissions is generally the burning of fossil fuels. That includes oil, coal, or natural gas. Hydrocarbons from these constituent compounds are oxidized when heated, releasing carbon dioxide as a product which enters our atmosphere. The problems that arise from carbon dioxide generally stem from carbon dioxide being a greenhouse gas. This means it has the property of trapping and reflecting heat from the sun within the atmosphere. This is known as the greenhouse effect. This leads to global warming. Another, less talked about effect of carbon emissions is ocean acidification.
Ocean acidification occurs when the emitted carbon dioxide is transported by the trade winds and westerly winds that circulate air throughout the atmosphere. So eventually, a lot of the CO2 ends up in the oceans where some of it gets absorbed, and according to Henry's law, the amount of dissolved gas is proportional to its partial pressure above the liquid. This means that when carbon dioxide emissions start to accumulate in the atmosphere, its partial pressure would increase, causing more carbon dioxide to dissolve into the ocean water. So, why is this significant? Well, under normal circumstances, the low concentrations of CO2 naturally present in the Earth's atmosphere dissolve into the oceans and seas, producing small amounts of hydrogen, bicarbonate, and carbonate ions, as well as some carbonic acid when the carbon dioxide reacts with the water. So, the carbonate ions are actually essential for corals, crustaceans, and mollusks to secrete their calcium carbonate exoskeletons, which they heavily rely on for fending off predators or surviving their environments. But when atmospheric carbon dioxide concentrations get too high, the partial pressure of CO2 increases, causing more CO2 to dissolve into the oceans, producing more carbonic acid as well as the hydrogen, bicarbonate, and carbonate ions. So, at first glance, the increased formation of carbonate ions might seem beneficial to these organisms, but it becomes important to consider how each fully dissolved molecule of carbon dioxide produces only one carbonate ion but two free protons. And so this means that the free protons can react with the carbonate more quickly than that ion could be regenerated, shifting the chemical equilibrium towards the formation of the carbonic acid and away from that of carbonate ions, resulting in lower ocean pH and therefore ocean acidification. This has several implications for the calcifying organisms in the marine biome. So, because there's more hydrogen ions in the water to react with the carbonate ions, there's less of those carbonates going around for the calcifiers to build their shells, and so species like crabs, clams, and corals would struggle to build their exoskeletons. And as you could see on those pictures on the left, the growth of these shellfish becomes really stunted, and even the fish themselves become affected when the changing pH affects their osmoregulation, causing them to get smaller. And when the corals start to die, a lot of the fish that rely on them for like shelter or as breeding grounds are left without protection, causing their populations to fall apart. Eventually, larger fish and mammals would be in turn affected when these smaller fish that they prey on disappear, essentially causing entire marine food chains to collapse. But the problem doesn't stop there. When the corals start dying and the fish that live on them vanish, tourism industries associated with swimming, diving, or island hopping would be hard hit. Also, when economically important fish, crabs, clams, and lobsters start to die, supply becomes low and both the demand and prices for imports become really high, which can be really troublesome for economies worldwide. Revenues of fishers, seafood chefs, and sailors, for example, would be cut, and many of them would lose their jobs or businesses. And as a result, entire communities or small countries on islands or near coastlines, which heavily rely on seafood, would suffer. Also, with 2.4 billion people, or almost a third of the world's population, living within 100 kilometers of a coastline, we could be talking about the livelihoods of that many people, and so it becomes clear that ocean acidification has far reaching impacts.
With the problems of carbon emissions and ocean acidification appropriately addressed, we can now look at possible solutions. Firstly, scientists and engineers have been working over the years to reduce carbon emissions. Solutions such as electric cars or fuel alternatives have been implemented. Biomass is a particular solution that has gained a lot of traction recently. It is considered renewable, and when used in conjunction with carbon capture technology, it can generate power with absolutely zero carbon emissions. The other main type of solution is alternative ways to produce electricity or power. These mainly include solar, wind, or nuclear. With these possible solutions in mind, engineers continue to work to find more, to help combat the problems of ocean acidification.
So the main objectives of our research are to replicate the effect of ocean acidification by exposing water to carbon dioxide, to observe the effects of prolonged ocean acidification, and to relate our results to what we learned about mass transfer.
Our experiment was to simplify ocean acidification so we could show how it worked in just a cup. So here we have a cup with water with some bromothymol blue pH indicator with a paper cup taped inside, which we'll run a baking soda vinegar reaction in to produce carbon dioxide, along with tape to tape the cup into the glass and aluminum foil to cover the glass once we start the reaction. What we'll be doing for the experiment is right away when we combine the baking soda and vinegar in the paper cup, we'll cover the cup instantly with aluminum foil in order to keep the CO2 in the system and not allow it to escape into the air. Then over time, the color of the water should change because the CO2 will dissolve into the water and cause a chemical reaction to create more hydrogen ions. So why do all these chemical reactions occur? So first, the baking soda and vinegar reaction. The sodium bicarbonate from the baking soda reacts with the acetic acid from the vinegar, and it produces carbon dioxide gas, water, and a byproduct of the two. The carbon dioxide that is produced in this reaction then diffuses into the water at the bottom of the cup through this reaction here and produces carbonic acid. The carbonic acid then breaks down into H plus ions, which all acids do, and it increases the acidity of the water by adding more hydrogen ions. Here's a video of one of the trials we ran, and as you can see, we cover it instantly, and you begin to see the color of the pH indicator to get slightly lighter and a more green color, and the longer that this cup is covered, it becomes greener and greener because the more CO2 that's dissolving and then the more CO2 that's breaking down in the water to make it more and more acidic and more hydrogen ions being added to the solution. And see, now you can see it's a completely different color than when we started the experiment. Here's a before and after shot of that experiment. And as you can tell, the before is a lot more blue and the after is a lot more of a green color, showing that the solution got more acidic throughout the experiment. One question that we had right after we ran the experiment was, why did the color not change instantly? And after thinking for a little bit, we realized it was because of Henry's law. So the partial pressure of carbon dioxide had to build up to allow more carbon dioxide to dissolve into the solution, and you can see that by the equation of the partial pressure of carbon dioxide equals the mole fraction of carbon dioxide in solution times the Henry's constant. So as the partial pressure of carbon dioxide increases, then the mole fraction of carbon dioxide has to increase in solution. So the more carbon dioxide that will go into solution while this partial pressure increases allows for more carbon dioxide to dissolve and increase the acidity of the solution.
The key empirical data to take away from the experiment are the changes to the pH and changes in carbon dioxide levels in the water. For pH, the water was initially 6.756, and after just 4 minutes of carbon dioxide exposure, it decreased to 5.549. Over the same 4 minutes, the mole fraction of carbon dioxide rose to 2.38 times 10 to the negative sixth.
So why did this experiment matter? The color change of the bromothymol blue shows a change in acidity, and this is exactly what happens with the ocean. As the carbon dioxide in the air builds up, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere will build up, allowing for more and more carbon dioxide to dissolve into the water in our oceans and make the oceans more acidic, which can cause all the issues that have been described in this video.